Evac is a game where the player will fly a helicopter and dodge enemy fire, as well as navigate terrain to rescue bunkered down soldiers. Players will fly into battle and have to dodge mountains and other terrain, as well as use it as cover to avoid incoming enemy bullets and rockets. The helicopter won't have any weapons, so the player will have to choose a path strategically to make it to the evacuation point without being shot down. Once at the evac point, the soldiers will be loaded onto the helicopter, and the player will have to fly out of the war zone to get the soldiers back to safety. This will require similar tactics to reaching the evac point, but at a harder difficulty level, as the enemy will be more motivated to shoot the helicopter down. The player's goal is to rescue the trapped soldiers without being shot down and return them to safety while under the attack of enemy ground troops, as well as facing a timer, which will simulate the enemy forces overpowering the Allied troops and killing them all. The player will face 3 different enemy types as they progress through the 10 set levels of the game. As the player reaches higher levels, the new enemies will be introduced, and more enemies will be added to each level, firing their weapons at a higher rate, making it more difficult to avoid incoming damage. Evac is a 3D, third-person game that is similar to Choplifter. One difference is that Choplifter gives the player the ability to fire weapons back at the enemy to destroy them. Evac only allows the player to dodge enemy fire, not return fire. Evac also has a set destination to rescue the troops and then get out of the war zone. Choplifter has the player pick up soldiers in all areas of the level and return them to base periodically to score points, then return to pick up more soldiers. We will have the opportunity to control the landscape of the environment, which will dictate the paths available to the player, as well as the number of enemies the player encounters on each level. Ground troops will have 3 weapon types: light machine guns, heavy machine guns, and rockets, which cause different amounts of damage. Players will have to make decisions on which paths to take, as well as what altitudes to fly at based upon incoming enemy fire. Each map will give the player multiple routes to choose from, and players can decide which route to take based upon the terrain they see ahead of them, the number and types of enemies ahead, and how quickly that route will get them to the evacuation point. In addition, the player will have to choose which troops they will attempt to rescue on each level. There will be 3 evacuation points per level. Only going to the first point will be the easiest way for the player to advance to the next level, but it will not rescue all of the stranded troops. In order to earn 100% completion on the level, the player will need to reach all 3 evacuation points before returning to base safely. One of the major risks involved in creating this game is creating enemies with different weapon types that are able to damage the helicopter, but also offer a fair opportunity for the player to avoid the damage. We could also face challenges in building an effective flying system for the evacuation helicopter that allows the player to control when they move forward, turn left or right, and allows the player to adjust flight height to avoid damage and also land the helicopter successfully. These risks can be limited by creating contingency plans to simplify the gameplay. For example, rather than giving the player full control of the helicopter's movement in all directions, we could keep the altitude steady and only add controls for forward and backward movement, as well as left and right. We have developed games with controls like this already, so this implementation would not be difficult. With regards to the enemies, we could simplify the animations and art of the enemies by simply changing the size of the projectiles, as well as damage dealt to differentiate between weapons. We could also have the weapons fire in specific directions at predetermined intervals, so we do not have to worry about incorporating player tracking with our AI. Thank you.